Please take your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly. Please silence all electronic devices. Please take a moment to identify the nearest exit. In addition to the 6 regular exits, there are 2 emergency exits at the back of the mezzanine and balcony levels. Thank you. Please stand for the entrance of the official party and remain standing for the national anthem, followed by the invocation given by Chaplain Matt Potts.
Good morning. Cadets and midshipmen, 27 years ago, I took the oath you're about to take to become a naval officer. It was one of the most consequential moments of my life, and it is my honor to offer prayers for you, for your families and friends, and for your service this day. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who stood on this stage in 1962, once said that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? The question of our lives is not who are you or what will you do, it is who and how will you serve. Cadets and midshipmen, by lunchtime, you will have vowed your lives and your futures to the service of others, to the service of the soldiers, airmen, guardians, sailors, and Marines you will lead, to the service of the Republic both you and they will defend. In other words, you will have heard life's most persistent and urgent question, and you will have responded with a sacred oath of service. As we approach the moment of that oath, then, let us invoke a spirit of steadfast readiness and solemn courage, that the promises all of us see you make this day may inspire in each of us the determination to follow your example, that all of us might offer our own lives and gifts for the welfare, safety, and freedom of others. Amen.
Please take your seats. President Garber, General Clark, distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Harvard's Joint Commissioning Ceremony for the class of 2026. It is now my honor to introduce the members of the official party. Alan Garber, President of Harvard University, Lieutenant General Retired Richard Clark, Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas Edwards, Professor of Aerospace Science, MIT Air Force ROTC, Captain James Morrow, Professor of Naval Science, Boston Consortium, Navy ROTC, Old Ironsides Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Allen, Professor of Military Science, Army ROTC for the Paul Revere Battalion. This ceremony confers the Military Officer Commission and the oath of office on the 19 graduating cadets of the Army ROTC Paul Revere Battalion, midshipmen of the Naval ROTC Old Ironsides Battalion, and cadets of the Air Force ROTC 365th Detachment, the class of 2026. Each one of them is committed to serve in America's armed forces and defend our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, our opening speaker today is the President of Harvard University. Alan Garber was named President of Harvard University on August 2nd, 2024, after serving as interim president since January 2nd, 2024. President Garber served as Harvard's Provost and Chief Academic Officer from 2011 to 2024. He is also the Mallinckrodt Professor of Healthcare Policy at Harvard Medical School, a Professor of Economics in the Harvard Faculty of Arts and Sciences, Professor of Public Policy in the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and Professor in the Department of Health Policy and Management in the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. A summa cum laude graduate of Harvard College, Dr. Garber received a PhD in economics from Harvard and an MD with research honors from Stanford. Please join me in welcoming Harvard's 31st President, Alan Garber.
Thank you, Major Swain. Welcome, General Clark, and distinguished guests. Welcome, parents, family, and friends. I am pleased to be here with you and grateful for the opportunity to acknowledge the achievements of our graduating cadets. You are heirs to the legacies of two great institutions, two great American institutions, Harvard University and the United States military. Excellence has flourished at their intersection for centuries. Members of our community have been decorated with the highest honors from each of the service branches. We proudly claim more Congressional Medal of Honor recipients than any college or university other than the service academies. Tens of thousands of Harvard students and alumni have chosen to answer the call of duty, serving with distinction, making sacrifices for the ideals of this great nation, and contributing to the public good. Among them are 136 sons of Harvard who lost their lives fighting for the Union cause during the Civil War, their names engraved on plaques throughout the quiet transept into which we entered Memorial Hall today. Edward Hutchinson Robbins Revere, Plaque 3, grandson of Paul Revere, Harvard College student and Harvard Medical School graduate, class of 1849. When the war broke out, he looked to know where he was most needed, advocating in Boston for special lectures on military surgery to aid the cause before heading to the battlefield to serve as a physician. He treated his patients, and I quote, under the fire of the enemy with the tools afforded by a hospital knapsack. He was captured and imprisoned in Richmond, Virginia, for 4 months, during which time he carefully tended to the sick and injured. Upon being exchanged and released, he returned to his post, saving countless limbs and lives before he was shot and killed at Antietam. Despite every circumstance, Dr. Revere was remembered by many for his cheerfulness and his kindness, gentle, honorable, and faithful to the last. In this year of the United States semi-quincentennial, we are reminded of the role that this place of learning and the people it has educated have played in the making of America. We are reminded that this country is the result of innumerable efforts from every kind of person with every kind of skill to ensure that the Republic endures. And we are reminded that how a duty is discharged often holds as much meaning as the duty itself. In you, our graduates, we see potential created when excellence, purpose, and service combine. We honor your selfless choice to support and defend the Constitution. That you have made such a choice distinguishes you in ways worthy of our admiration and respect. I hope that these years of effort and years of friendship have bonded you for life. And I hope that you will return to us when time allows and share the experience and wisdom that you will no doubt gain through service. Thank you.
President Garber will be presenting a gift to each commissionee on behalf of Harvard University. The gift is the second volume of William Manchester's 3-volume biography of Winston Churchill, The Last Lion, Winston Spencer Churchill Alone, 1932 to 1940, which is located underneath their chairs, and a coin which we will present as each commissionee receives their commission. The coin contains an image of Memorial Hall on the front side and the Veritas Shield on the reverse side with an inscription, "Depart to serve better thy country and thy kind," in the year 1916, which represents the year when ROTC was established at Harvard in connection with the United States entry into the First World War. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Chair of Army ROTC for Harvard University, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Allen.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. I proudly present to you the Harvard graduating and commissioning class of 2026. President Garber, Lieutenant General Clark, Brigadier General Stackle, distinguished guests, families, and friends, what an amazing day we have here today. Families, thank you for entrusting the amazing cadre, the Harvard faculty and staff, with your sons and daughters. So, this moment is about you. When you get up here on stage, please take the time and celebrate this moment with them. It is something that you will cherish for years to come. To the Harvard advocates and alumni, your amazing support has been instrumental, and we could not do this without you. I first want to start off by giving you your very last history lesson while here at Harvard, and celebrate Harvard's incredible military contributions to our amazing country that happens to turn 250 years in just over a month. Remember, you are about to take an oath not to a sovereign ruler or to a political party, but to a set of ideas that are embodied by our Constitution. And something very close in our proximity, 32 of the Minutemen at Battle of Lexington and Concord were Harvard alumni. There were 22 at Bunker Hill as well. In the Civil War, there were 9 Medal of Honor recipients from Harvard. You were part of a Harvard University. You were part of a history of Harvard University, where the very first Reserve Officer Training Corps was established in 1916 in the midst of World War I. Nearly 40,000 Harvard alumni served in World War I and World War II, with 4 Medal of Honor recipients. More recently, in the last 25 years, Harvard continues to set the bar, where over 210 officers have commissioned into the military. And today, we are proudly commissioning 19 men and women into the Army Navy, Air Force, and Space Force. To further explain the rich history of Harvard and the military, there are 37 memorials spread across campus dedicated to alumni who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Of special note, our memorial church, obviously located in Harvard Yard, and the very building you sit in today, Memorial Hall, as you just heard from President Garber. Commissionees, you are not joining just the military, but a Harvard family, both institutionally as well as militarily, and that needs to be celebrated. Next, I'd like to welcome back one former commander from the Navy ROTC program, Captain Jack Howdeshell. Where are you? Please stand. He served over 34 years to this amazing country. And with that, I would like to graciously welcome our new commanders, Captain Jim Morrow and Lieutenant Colonel Nick Edwards, as the new commanders of Navy and Air Force ROTC. Gentlemen, please stand and get your welcoming as well. As a result of the past and present leadership, there are some amazing cadets and midshipmen up on stage, and their accomplishments are second to none. For the Army, this senior class has the #1 GPA and #1 Order of Merit score across the brigade of over 40 programs and in the Northeast, as well as the Ivy Leagues. Yeah. All the Army seniors receive their #1 component, which would be the Army, which would be the Reserve, Guard, or active duty, as well as the branch inside the Army. And they have been ranked the top 5 program in the nation for 5 consecutive years. The Navy senior class alone, the Navy seniors alone reached 300% of its annual target for nuclear accessions. The success directly strengthens the Navy's ability to maintain a continuous pipeline, highly trained, technical proficient officers who are safely operating the backbone of the Navy fleet, the nuclear-powered submarines and aircraft carriers. And the Air Force ROTC seniors have been instrumental in 3 significant achievements. The 2022 Large Detachment of the Year, the best in the nation out of 145 detachments. The 2025 Northeast Region's Medium Detachment of the Year. They were #1 in physical fitness average nationwide, and they too have the #1 GPA across the country. Finally, we get to recognize 5 cadets as part of the Army's End of Camp Commissionee program, and we're going to gladly welcome them to the stage. Leal Ayala, Anna Keller, Noel Keto, Jason Kwok, and Prana Pendry. This program is unique to the Army and allows cadets the flexibility to secure an internship or overcome a medical challenge or any other challenge they may have between their junior and senior year. As a major part of the senior class, I wanted to ensure they are part of this commissioning ceremony with their peers. These cadets will attend summer training in Fort Knox, Kentucky shortly after graduation, and then be assessed into the Army Reserves. At this time, President Garber, Lieutenant General Clark, and myself will present them with a few special souvenirs for their hard work over the past 4 years. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker. He has commanded at every echelon the Air Force offers and is over his distinguished 38-year military career. He rose from academy football player to combat aviator, commanding forces across 3 continents and culminating his career as the superintendent of the U.S. Air Force Academy. Ironically enough, Harvard's Air Force ROTC program was just good enough to convince both his son, First Lieutenant Milo Clark, and daughter, soon-to-be Second Lieutenant Zoe Clark, not to attend the academy. He is now the executive director of the College Football Playoff, where he's able to showcase his experience and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General Rich Clark.
I think the mic works. Oh, good. Welcome, everyone. Greetings. And I do want to say one thing, though. I got to clear up something that Tom just mentioned about the kids. I think Milo set the standard because he was going to go to the Air Force Academy until he found out I was going to be the superintendent. And then Zoe said, "Dad, not doing it." So they settled for second best. Sorry, sir. No. Actually, they couldn't have made a better choice. They couldn't have made a better choice. And I want to thank you, President Garber, sir, for your leadership at Harvard through turbulent times. Your steadfastness has helped this institution continue, so thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I also want to thank Tom, Nick, Jim, first for having me here. I know it was hard for you, Tom. You're the leader, and you brought an Air Force guy in, but here I am. And but I certainly appreciate this. It's such an honor, especially with Zoe being in this graduating class. But really, thank you for allowing me to be here. But more importantly, thank you for producing the next generation of leaders. And what you have done, you and your cadre have done, is immensely, immensely important to our country. So thank you all. Let's give them a round of applause. I also want to congratulate and thank all of the families here. These are some young people that have had dreams and aspirations throughout their whole lives. But I always say, if you see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you know it didn't get there by itself. Just wait for it, we'll get it. But you have helped them in ways that we can't even imagine and that we can't even measure. But congratulations for some amazing, amazing young people that are about to serve our country. I blew it out. Okay, there we go. Mostly, though, I want to congratulate you because they're about off your payroll. We're all getting a pay raise. This is good. This is good. So, congratulations to you all, though. This is a great achievement. But then the group that we're all here to honor, I have to say thank you for stepping up to serve, stepping up to be a part of something bigger than yourselves, and being a part of 2 amazing institutions in our country's history, Harvard and our armed forces. And you are special, special people. And it's an honor for me to be here in front of you, but I wish that I had the opportunity to serve with you. But congratulations to you. Let's give them a huge round of applause. Tom mentioned it in his remarks, though. They're about to take an oath of office that is a commitment to something so big and so important to our country. They're committing to our Constitution, the fabric that makes our country what it is. It has woven us over centuries and it will continue to weave us into the future, but only because people like them are willing to take an oath and willing to commit and willing to sacrifice to something bigger. And so I am just honored to be a part of this, but I will say it was exactly 40 years ago today that I took the oath of office to join the Air Force. And it is exactly 40 years ago tomorrow that I graduated from the Air Force Academy. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And whether you stay and serve for 4 years or 40 years, your service is very much appreciated. I urge you to enjoy it. I urge you to make sure that when you look back on it, that your memories are about the things that you did, the differences that you made, and the people that you touch. But enjoy it. 40 years went so fast, so fast. I know I don't look like it, but it seems like yesterday. It really does. But when I think about Harvard's history with the armed forces, there aren't many schools that can say that they've had graduates that served in every conflict that our country has ever been a part of, have fought in every war, took the first oath of office in 1789, and have continued right up to this group right here. It's pretty incredible. And I did some reading about it, and there was one graduate that really struck me that I want to talk about. And I talk about 40 years ago for me, but let's go back 75 years to a graduate from Harvard. His name was Sherrod Skinner. Sherrod Skinner was a graduate here. He was from Michigan. He lived in Connecticut. He had a twin brother here, David Skinner. And when Sherrod graduated, he commissioned into the Marine Corps. He commissioned, and in July, he completed his training, and he was shipped off in 1951. Actually graduated in 51. He went to training in 52, and then he went to fight in the Korean War. Now, Sherrod was an artillery observer, and he was immediately put in charge, months after graduation from Harvard. He was put in charge of an outpost that was on the front lines at a critical point in the front line in the Korean War. And one of the situations that he faced early on was in his outpost, the enemy knew that it was a critical place, and they mounted a massive attack against that point in the line. And Lieutenant Skinner was in charge of this outpost, and he was told, hold the line until reinforcements come. He hadn't been a lieutenant that long, months, but he knew what that meant. He knew what hold the line meant. He knew what his oath meant, and he knew how to lead his men to hold the line. And when the enemy came forward, he directed the attack, he directed machine gun fire, he directed mortar fire. Eventually, though, his lines of communication were cut off, and he couldn't have any more artillery fire, so now it was up to he and his men to hold the line. They continued to fight. He continued to command from his bunker, even to the point where he had to leave his bunker on several occasions to bring ammunition to the machine gunners, to bring grenades to some of the soldiers, to continue to direct the fire. He was wounded twice. He refused medical attention so that his men could be treated. And eventually, they were out of munition. Reinforcements hadn't arrived. They were cut off from communications, and the enemy had broken through the line. They fell back into the bunker. They defended as long as they could. Finally, he told his men, feign death. Play dead. It's our only hope. They all played dead. The enemy came into the bunker. They looked in. They saw a bunch of Marines laying on the ground. And when they left to ensure that there were no survivors, they threw a grenade in just to finish the job. And when they did, Lieutenant Skinner saw that grenade land between him and two of his men. And without hesitation, he jumped on that grenade. He took the explosion himself to save his men. Lieutenant Sherrod knew what it meant to hold the line. He knew what it meant to commit to something bigger than himself. As a result, that was on October 26th, 1952, 3 days before his 23rd birthday. He was 22 years old. A year later, he was posthumously received the Congressional Medal of Honor, one of 18 from Harvard, but the one that struck me the most. 22 years old, a year in the military, and led with everything that he had and gave everything that he had. And when I hear stories like that, I ask myself, what would I do? Could I do that? I ask myself, what were the values that were instilled in him that made him do what needed to be done to hold the line? And I study leadership, I look at other leaders, I try to learn from other leaders, and there's 3 values that I think had to be ingrained in him, and if they weren't, he certainly demonstrated them. The first being integrity. Integrity means that you execute and exhibit actions that are in alignment with your morals and your ethics and your beliefs and your commitments. That your actions and who you profess to be are in alignment. Lieutenant Skinner did that day. He showed integrity without question. Integrity. The other one is humility. Humility doesn't mean that you think less of yourself. It means that you think of yourself less. And if there's not an example of thinking of yourself less than dying for your teammates, I don't know what is. He certainly had humility ingrained in him. And excellence. He was less than a year as an officer. And he knew how to lead. He understood what it meant to hold the line. He understood what it meant to give everything he had, but really to execute his job to the fullest. In a short time, these things were ingrained in him. Excellence doesn't always mean that you're the best or that you're at the top, but what it means is that you're always elevating performance. You're always getting better. You're better today than you were yesterday. You're better this year than you were last year. You're better this time you did an action than you were the last time you did it. It's about being better. There is no end to better. And I have no doubt that Lieutenant Skinner continued to get better because he became so incredible in such a short time. Integrity, humility, excellence, those are the values that he had. But I will say this too, values don't mean anything without action. And there's a quote by Lao Tzu. He's a Chinese philosopher, 500 BC. And most of us have probably heard that. Your thoughts become words. Your words become actions. Your actions become habits. Your habits become character, and your character is your destiny. His thoughts translated to destiny like no other story I've heard. And his actions were exactly what his thoughts had instilled within him. And when I think about those, what are the thoughts and the actions? Because we know what the words and the thoughts were: integrity, humility, and excellence. And so what I want to tell you is the way that I see the actions and the habits coming from those words. For integrity, it's about living honorably. Live honorably. Do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. Live honorably in accordance with your own beliefs and your own moral standard. Live honorably. That's what integrity is about. When we talk about humility, humility isn't, like I said, thinking less of yourself. It's about lifting others. Lift others before yourself. We've all been a part of organizations where people climb on the backs of others to get to the top. But it's about lifting your teammates to be their best possible selves, helping them to grow and to learn, and doing everything that you can. Imagine if everybody on a team was committed to helping everyone else on a team, how great that team would be. Lift others. Those are the actions and habits of a humble person. And excellence. I mentioned it's about getting better every day. Elevate performance. Elevating performance is about a mindset. It's not necessarily about the things that you do or the levels that you achieve, but it's about every day saying, I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday in everything that I do. Elevate performance. Live honorably. Lift others. Elevate performance. Those are the actions of a man, of a woman, of character. Now, I want to give you one more example, and it's a personal one. So, in 2008, I was deployed to Iraq for a year and left my family and went, and I deployed with the Army. Imagine that. And I led a team of about 45 people called the Joint Interagency Task Force. And I worked for Multinational Force Iraq. And it was, without a doubt, the hardest year of my life. I will never forget it. But it was also one of the most meaningful of my life. And I led my team, and I was committed to the same kinds of values that we just talked about. I put everything I had into leading my team, into lifting others, into living honorably, into elevating our performance and making us better and better. And when it came time for leave, I even let my team go first. I said, when everybody else is done with their leave, then I'll go. And so it was about 8.5 months into my deployment when I finally got to take leave and I got to go home. And I remember going to the airport, Baghdad International Airport. And when I got there, I told myself, I said, man, I have been leading hard for a long time. It's time to take a break. And I started my leave right then and right there. And I walked into the airport, I checked in to get on my plane, and the airman at the operations desk said, Colonel Clark, I was a colonel back then, Colonel Clark, you're the senior ranking officer on the airplane. So you're the chalk commander, meaning I was in charge of everybody that was getting on that airplane. And I was like, no, I'm not. There's got to be someone else. He said, sir, not only are you the senior ranking, you're the only officer on the airplane. You're in charge. So I took the list, I looked down it, I got everyone together, and then I said, and the next senior ranking person was a tech sergeant on the list. And I said, hey, come here. I got a job for you. And I gave him the list, and I said, you're going to be responsible for everybody on this list. And I want you to make sure that we're communicating and that everybody's taken care of. You got it? He's like, yes, sir, I got it. And he took it and he owned it. He led. He was being a leader. I was delegating. Right? So we go and we're all waiting and everyone's sitting on the ground outside. And then the ops airman, he comes up to me and he says, hey, Colonel Clark, I got some bad news. The plane is broken and you guys are going to be delayed. And I was like, are you kidding me? Come on. He's like, sir, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the crew says it's broken. And being a pilot, it's not good to fly broken airplanes, but I was like, okay. And so I sat there and I thought, I better tell the tech sergeant. So I went and I told him, hey, let everybody know the plane's broken and we'll be off in a little while. So he goes and he does his duty. Well, then the time is just dragging on. And I'm just getting so impatient. And I go to the ops airman probably 4 times. And I said, when's the plane going to be ready? What's going on? And he finally got to the point, he was just like, sir, I don't know. I think he was getting a little bit scared of me. And he was certainly a little bit tired of me bothering him and pestering him so that I could go home to my family. And I didn't even tell the tech sergeant as I was getting this information. I just let everybody sit outside and I did my thing. Well, the last time that I went to the tech sergeant, I said, hey, what's the status? Tell me where the plane is. What are we doing? He said, hey, sir, you know what? There's a distinguished visitor lounge for colonels and above that you could go sit in. Do you want me to take you there? I was like, oh, that sounds good. So I go in this little room. They have cookies and soda. There's a TV playing the Armed Forces Network. And I just sit there and I am fat, dumb, and happy. watching TV, just relaxing. It was even a little bit air conditioned, as much as you can get in Baghdad. And I just sat there for a long time. And the airman was right. I stopped bothering him because I was good. I was good. And so then he comes in finally and he says, "Hey, Colonel Clark, the plane's ready." And I was the first one. I put my helmet on, I put my vest on, and my battle rattle, as we call it, and I line up, and I'm standing at the door, and I realize, wait, I'm standing here by myself. And so I went and told the tech sergeant, I said, "Hey, the plane's ready. Can you let everybody else know?" And he was like, "Yes, sir, got it." And he went, rounded everybody up, and we got on. We lined up, and I was first one in line. We walk out, we go to the C-130, the back's open. We got on really quickly, and we all sat down, and we took off, and we flew, and we landed in Mosul. And that was one stop to Kuwait and then home. And I was like, man, one step closer. We landed in Mosul, and the crew tells us as we're getting off the plane, we're broken. We're gonna be here a little while. So I told the tech sergeant, "Hey, we're broken. Make sure everybody's taken care of." And we walk in, we get to the ops desk. Guess what my first question was? "Where's the lounge?" They stuck me in the lounge. Better cookies, better soda, TV, and I just sat there. And I enjoyed my time. Then the ops desk, they come into the room and they tell me, "Colonel Clark, plane's fixed." Well, plane's not fixed. We have a different plane for you. And we're gonna be able to get you to Kuwait so that you and your team can go home, my team. And so I made sure this time that I told the tech sergeant, I said, "Hey, we're gonna go, we're getting on a different plane, so let's get everyone lined up." So we line up, and I'm first one in line again. And we start walking, and we get out to our C-130, and it's all buttoned up. It's all, meaning closed. All the doors are closed. And I said, "Why is this the one? It's closed." And he said, "Yes, sir, this is the one, but we're gonna enter through the front." And I was like, "Well, that takes too long. Why can't we?" He's like, "Sir, I'm just the ops desk airman. That's the crew's call." I was like, "Fine." So we walk out there, and we go in the front. Normally, I would give a fist bump to the loadmaster as I'm walking into the plane, but I was just like, "Hey, why didn't you guys have the back opened up? We could have already been on here. I don't understand." And he's like, "Sir, please, if you could just have a seat." So I kept, I was like, fine. And I walked, as soon as I walked by him, and I looked back to the back of the plane, and there's 2 coffins, flag draped. And as soon as I saw them, I just felt this sense of dread, what a jerk I am. What a poor leader. What an anti-everything that I said I would be, that I was that day. And when I was the first one on the plane, that meant that I got to go all the way to the back, and I sat right with those 2 coffins right in front of me. And I got to do some thinking. And I got to think about myself and what kind of leader I had been that day, and my choice to not lead that day. I thought about the people that were in those coffins that gave everything. Everything. And I couldn't make it through one more day of leadership. One more day of helping people to be their best. And I made that choice. And I sat there and I said, never again. Never again will I choose not to lead. And it was a long trip. And when I got home, I told Amy the story, and I said, I can't even believe how I acted. I can't believe that I couldn't go one more day to be the leader that I said I was going to be. Live honorably, lift others, elevate performance was not a part of my value set that day. And so I tell you this to say every day you make a choice We all do. But don't ever think that your choices don't matter. Make the right ones. You choose your attitude, you choose your values, and you choose to lead or not to lead every day. And when you don't, sometimes you remember it for the rest of your life. You got two examples today. You got Lieutenant Skinner and you got Colonel Clark. We both made choices. Use those examples to determine how you're going to lead for the rest of your time in the military, for the rest of your life, because leadership is not confined to the military. Leadership is everywhere you go, every stop you make, every time you meet someone. You have the chance to live honorably, to lift others, to elevate performance with integrity, humility, and excellence. Choose your values and live them every day. And I just want to thank these young folks because I know they've already made a choice to be a part of the armed forces. And now my charge to you is choose to lead every day. Every day. Thank you.
Army Cadet Chad Greenway is now presenting Lieutenant General Clark with an engraved plaque commemorating the 2026 Harvard Joint Service Commissioning that includes a coin from each of the ROTC programs. The commissioning ceremony is a time-honored tradition that signifies a new officer joining the profession of arms. This ceremony is the visible transformation from cadet to officer. A commissioned officer must administer the oath of office to the new officer and swear to them to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. As such, each newly commissioned officer becomes an agent of the executive branch of the government appointed by the President. The pinning of the rank is a visible sign of this appointment and of the commitment made by the officer. Family members are welcome to come forward during the ceremony to take photographs. We ask that you hold applause until the presentation of each commissioned officer to the audience. At this time, our commissionees will recite their oaths of office with General Clark. Parents and special guests will be invited on stage later in our program to pin on the new officer's rank, and finally, each new officer will then receive his or her first salute.
That I will love and faithfully discharge
The first officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Quinn Daly. Lieutenant Daly is originally from Darien, Connecticut, and is the son of Brian and Susan Daly. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in economics. Lieutenant Daly will serve on active duty as a cyber electromagnetic warfare officer and will attend basic officer leader course at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Lieutenant Daly's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Susan Daly, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Quinlan Daly. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. Senator Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Daly will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Mess Sergeant Rob Amundsen. Our next officer to be commissioned today is Army Second Lieutenant Chad Greenway. Lieutenant Greenway is originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, and is the son of Chad and Carrie Greenway. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in economics. Lieutenant Greenway has been selected for active duty and will serve as an infantry officer. He will attend basic officer leader course at Fort Benning, Georgia. Lieutenant Greenway's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Chad and Carrie Greenway, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Chad Greenway. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with his certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Greenway will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Mess Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Cicera Holbrook. Lieutenant Holbrook is originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and is the daughter of Soraya and Ames Holbrook. She will graduate with a bachelor's degree in neuroscience. Lieutenant Holbrook will serve on active duty as a medical services officer and will attend basic officer leader course at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Lieutenant Holbrook's parents, Soraya and Ames Holbrook, will now pin on her gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Cicera Holbrook. In view of these qualities and her demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, she is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting her with her certificate of commission, and President Garber will present her with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Holbrook will now receive her first salute from Sergeant Bill Oliviero. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Zoe Kim. Second Lieutenant Kim is originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and is the daughter of Glenn and Lee Kim. She will graduate with a bachelor's degree in human behavior and biology. Lieutenant Kim will serve on active duty as a medical services officer and will attend basic officer leader course at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Second Lieutenant Kim's parents, Glenn and Lee Kim, will now pin on her gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Zoe Kim. In view of these qualities and her demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, she is, therefore, promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting her with her certificate of commission, and President Garber will present her with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Kim will now receive her first salute from her ROTC instructor, Master Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant John Marcucci. Lieutenant Marcucci is originally from Medfield, Massachusetts, and is the son of Michael and Emily Marcucci. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in social studies. Lieutenant Marcucci will serve in the Army Reserves as a military intelligence officer and attend basic officer leader course at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Lieutenant Marcucci's parents, Michael and Emily Marcucci, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of John Marcucci. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Marcucci will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Master Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Jack Martin. Lieutenant Martin is originally from Westfield, New Jersey, and is the son of David and Sharon Martin. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in philosophy. Lieutenant Martin will attend Harvard Law School on educational delay to become a JAG Corps officer. Lieutenant Martin's parents, David and Sharon Martin, and sister Lila Martin, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Jack Martin. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with his certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Martin will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Master Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Maxwell Moorhead. Second Lieutenant Moorhead is originally from Greenwood Village, Colorado, and is the son of Matthew and Lisa Moorhead. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in comparative literature. Lieutenant Moorhead will commission as an infantry officer and report to Basic Officer Leader Course at Fort Benning, Georgia. Lieutenant Moorhead's father, Matthew Moorhead, and grandfather, Colonel Retired Robert Moorhead, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Maxwell Moorhead. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is, therefore, promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Moorhead will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Master Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Aiden Pesh. Lieutenant Pesh is originally from Putnam, Connecticut, and is the son of Damon Pesh and Jennifer Lakina. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in computer science. Lieutenant Pesh will serve on active duty as a cyber officer and will attend Basic Officer Leader Course at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Lieutenant Pesh's parents, Damon Pesh and Jennifer and David Lakina, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Aiden Pesh. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Pesh will now receive his first salute from his grandfather, Petty Officer Second Class Robert Sherwood. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Eva Rankin. Lieutenant Rankin is originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and is the daughter of Thomas and Tara Rankin. She will graduate with a bachelor's degree in social studies. Lieutenant Rankin will serve in the Army Reserves as a military intelligence officer and will attend Basic Officer Leader Course at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Lieutenant Rankin's parents, Thomas and Tara Rankin, and siblings Zoe, Ian, and Eli Rankin will now pin on her gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Eva Rankin. In view of these qualities and her demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, she is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting her with her certificate of commission, and President Garber will present her with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Rankin will now receive her first salute from her grandfather, Howard Zaharoff. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Adler Schultz. Lieutenant Schultz is originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and is the son of Akiko and Eric Schultz. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in molecular and cellular biology. Lieutenant Schultz will serve on active duty as a medical services officer and will attend basic officer leader course at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Lieutenant Schultz's parents, Akiko and Eric Schultz, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Adler Schultz. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with the certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Schultz will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Master Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Anthony Stackle. Lieutenant Stackle is originally from San Antonio, Texas, and is the son of Brigadier General and Mrs. Mark and Melinda Stackle. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in human biology, behavior, and evolution. Lieutenant Stackle will attend medical school at University of Texas Southwestern Medical School on educational delay. Lieutenant Stackle's parents, Brigadier General and Mrs. Mark and Melinda Stackle, and siblings Adam and Abby Stackle, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Anthony Stackle. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Army to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Army, Daniel Driscoll. General Clark is now presenting him with his certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Stackle will now receive his first salute from his ROTC instructor, Master Sergeant Rob Amundsen. The next officer to be commissioned today is Ensign William Kaufman. Ensign Kaufman is originally from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and is the son of Lieutenant Commander retired and Mr. Kate and Jake Kaufman. He graduates with a bachelor's degree in history, literature, and economics. He commissions as a submarine officer, and his first assignment will be Naval Nuclear Power Training Command in Charleston, South Carolina. Ensign Kaufman's parents, Lieutenant Commander and Mr. Kat and Jake Kaufman, will now pin on his his shoulder boards. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of William Kaufman. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Navy to the rank of ensign, effective 27 May 2006, by order of the Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cao. General Clark is now presenting him with his certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Ensign Kaufman will now receive his first salute from Midshipman John Dierig. The next officer to be commissioned today is Ensign Thomas Leeds. Ensign Leeds is originally from Northville, Michigan, and is the son of Lieutenant Colonel retired and Mrs. Oliver and Erica Leeds. He graduates with a bachelor's degree in astrophysics and East Asia studies. He commissions as a student naval aviator, and his first assignment will be in Pensacola, Florida. Ensign Leeds' parents, Lieutenant Colonel and Mrs. Oliver and Erica Leeds, and brother Oliver Leeds, will now pin on his shoulder boards. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Thomas Leeds. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Navy to the rank of ensign, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cao. General Clark is now presenting him with his certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Ensign Leeds will now receive his first salute from Corporal Cole Taddeo. The next officer to be commissioned today is Ensign Lucas Martin. Ensign Martin is originally from Briarcliff Manor, New York, and is the son of Christopher Martin and Donna Morrison. He graduates with a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics and commissions as a submarine officer. Ensign Martin's first assignment will be Naval Nuclear Power Training Command in Charleston, South Carolina. Ensign Martin's parents, Christopher Martin and Donna Morrison, will now pin on his shoulder boards. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Lucas Martin. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Navy to the rank of ensign, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cao. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Ensign Martin will now receive his first salute from Melissa Ross. The next officer to be commissioned today is Ensign Sidney Slazak. Ensign Slazak is originally from Buffalo, New York, and is the daughter of Sherry Slazak. She graduates with a bachelor's degree in environmental science and engineering. She commissions as a meteorology and oceanography officer, and her first assignment will be the Joint Typhoon Warning Center in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Ensign Slazak's mother, Sherry Slazak, and grandmother, Monique Veraska, will now pin on her shoulder boards. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Sidney Slazak. In view of these qualities and her demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, she is therefore promoted in the United States Navy to the rank of ensign, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cao. General Clark is now presenting her with her certificate of commission, and President Garber will present her with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Ensign Slazak will now receive her first salute from Senior Airman Michael Slazak. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Zoe Clark. Lieutenant Clark is originally from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and is the daughter of Lieutenant General Retired and Mrs. Richard and Amy Clark. She will graduate with a bachelor's degree in government, global health, and health policy. Lieutenant Clark commissions as a contracting officer. Lieutenant Clark's parents, Lieutenant General Retired and Mrs. Richard and Amy Clark, and brother, Second Lieutenant Milo Clark, will now pin on her gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Zoe Clark. In view of these qualities and her demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, she is, therefore, promoted in the United States Air Force to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink. General Clark is now presenting her with her certificate of commission, and President Garber will present her with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Clark will now receive her first salute from Sergeant Bill Oliviero. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Joseph Wong. Lieutenant Wong is originally from Denton, Texas, and is the son of Dr. and Mrs. Hyung Wong and Jung Wong. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in statistics and a secondary in neuroscience. Second Lieutenant Wong commissions as a pilot. Lieutenant Wong's parents, Dr. and Mrs. Hyung Wong and Jung Wong, and siblings, Jeanette, Jessica, and David Wong, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Joseph Wong. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is, therefore, promoted in the United States Air Force to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Wong will now receive his first salute from Cadet Jason Herr. The next officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Michael Kuhl. Lieutenant Kuhl is originally from Elmhurst, Illinois, and is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Bill and Janine Kuhl. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Lieutenant Kuhl commissions as a Space Force officer. Lieutenant Kuhl's parents, Bill Kuhl and Janine Kuhl, and brothers, First Lieutenant Bill Kuhl and Second Lieutenant Joe Kuhl, will now pin on his gold bars. President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Michael Kuhl. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Air Force to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Kuhl will now receive his first salute from Corporal Cole Taddeo. The final officer to be commissioned today is Second Lieutenant Christopher Shen. Lieutenant Shen is originally from Columbus, Ohio, and is the son of Jeff Shen and Dana Wu. He will graduate with a bachelor's degree in statistics. Second Lieutenant Shen commissions as an operations research analyst. Lieutenant Shen's parents, Jeff Shen, Dana Wu, and sister, Jessica Shen, will now pin on his gold bars. The President of the United States has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional abilities of Christopher Shen. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he is therefore promoted in the United States Air Force to the rank of Second Lieutenant, effective 27 May 2026, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink. General Clark is now presenting him with a certificate of commission, and President Garber will present him with a coin on behalf of Harvard University. Lieutenant Shen will now receive his first salute from Cadet Jason Herr. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating the Harvard commissionees of the class of 2026. The faculty and staff of the Departments of Military Science wish to thank President Garber, General Clark, Chaplain Matt Potts, the Brass Quintet, family, and friends for their support of this ceremony. We're especially grateful for their outstanding support over the years for these emerging leaders. Please stand as Chaplain Potts offers the benediction and remain standing for the playing of the service medley. You can find the lyrics in your program.
Robert Todd Lincoln was the eldest son of Abraham and Mary Todd Lincoln, and he graduated from Harvard College in the middle of the Civil War. He studied law for a little bit, but dropped out of law school because he wanted a commission in the Union Army. His mother, Mary Todd, objected to this plan. All their other children had died in childhood, and she did not want her son going to war. President Lincoln replied to her, "Our son is not more dear to us than the sons of other people are to their mothers." Robert was commissioned a Union officer in February of 1865. The basic principle of American democracy is that all people are created equal and that this equality demands unwavering defense. There is perhaps no greater service to democracy than the service that you have chosen. This is not only because your service aspires to the defense of equality, it's also because your choice to serve is the lived expression of that equality. You all are among the most gifted, talented, and skilled minds of your generation. You could have done anything. But you also know that if any must serve, then you will serve. You know that the promise of your life is not more dear than the promise of anyone else's life. You have staked your lives and your fortune and your sacred honor on the basic democratic principle that all people are equal, that all humans should be free. Without that principle, we have no republic. Without people willing to defend that principle, our republic falls. By virtue of your vows today, you now serve on the front lines of that principle's defense. So, in the name of everyone who is here and who is gathered to celebrate you and who loves you, let me say, bless you. May you be kept safe from every harm. May you be kept strong for any sacrifice. And may all of us who have witnessed these vows, these oaths, may we be inspired in our own lives to follow the good principle of all your promise. Amen.
Please remain standing for the departure of the official party. This concludes our commissioning ceremony for the Harvard University military graduates of the class of 2026. We appreciate your attendance at today's ceremony and your continued support of our young officers. Please join us for a small reception in the Cambridge Queen's Head. We ask that our 19 commissionees stand fast for a group photo. Thank you.